Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Board work session for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. If you would like to join in via conference call and listen, not for comment, but listen, the phone number is 360.
You want to join here in the room? Okay.
The phone number is 360-252-9020, and the PIN number is 1234. I'm John Hutchings, the chair of the board. Also present is Commissioner Gary Edwards and County Manager Ramiro Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, and of course we have Olivia Odman, Patty Rosetto, and Denise Doty. Is Commissioner Minster signed in yet?
Commissioner Minster just let me know that he needed to go back to his car to retrieve his laptop, so he'll be joining us here in 5 minutes, hopefully.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this is the topic today for an hour and a half. Is 9, 10, 11, 2.5 hours. Good grief. Budget up to 2.5 hours. Budget deliberations with a discussion and decision. So go ahead, either Romero or Robin.
I'm just going to make just a simple opening statement. This is somewhat of the last step in the decision-making process. Obviously, there's not making a formal decision today, but this is getting to the end of the journey in a way of a very complex year, a very complex budget process. And again, I'd like to express my appreciation to the board for your leadership and my appreciation for staff, Robin and her staff, to walking us through this very complex process. So thank you.
Thank you, Romero.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So here we are, and hopefully it won't take 2.5 hours today. We also have a work session with you tomorrow that we may be able to cancel if we get through today. But what we're looking for today is your final decisions on the budget. And that will allow staff to make any last minute changes that you should direct us to do and have all of the documents ready for next Friday when you take action on the budget. We'll have 4 main areas of conversation this morning. I will present to you 2 new requests that were not included in the preliminary budget. I will ask you if you would like to make any changes based on the comments that you received over the last 2 days, or any other reasons that you should want to make a final change to this budget. We'll review the provisos that we believe we captured your direction on provisos for the budget. So we'll review those and make sure we got them the way you would like them. And then the last item for this morning is a review of the list of resolutions that you will be adopting next week. So that's the agenda for today. So we'll jump right in to new requests. And what I'm looking for here is whether or not the board would like to add these 2 requests to the budget. The first you heard about during the public hearings when we talked with Superior Court. And that is the need for funding, and the court has come and discussed this with you, the need for funding for legislation that was passed earlier this year, that requires the court to assign an attorney and pay for that attorney when there is a guardianship case. So for the child, or later on, the legislation includes adults who are the subject of a guardianship case, the court would assign and pay for an attorney. That is an unfunded mandate from the state. It is supposed to become effective January 1st. There have been discussions between the prime sponsor and the governor about delaying the effective date under his emergency powers, since we are in the midst of a pandemic. So I know that that's being explored at the state level, but it is possible that the legislation will take effect on January 1st. At best, it will be delayed. And it is our understanding that the delay would be until July 1st. So there would still need to be money in next year's budget. The court has done their best at estimating the cost, and they think that it will probably be somewhere between $200,000 to $400,000 a year. So what we are proposing with concurrence from the court is that we add $250,000 to the Superior Court budget in 2021 with a proviso that makes it clear that that funding is only to implement this legislation, and that if the legislation should not become effective for whatever reason, that that money would not be spent. So with that, I would, I'll try to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
And I'm looking for a direction from the board.
Commissioner Menser, any comments or questions regarding this topic? The funding.
I don't know that I have any choice but to agree, but I do want to hear at some point from legal counsel as to why this does not violate the state statute on unfunded mandates, because I'm not an expert in that statute, but this doesn't seem to fall into the category. I know other ways that they've swirled around that, but this does not seem to fall into that category. So I'd like to hear whether or not we have legal standing to challenge this in some way, because this is exactly the kind of thing that, that law was designed to stop. And the state shouldn't get to pick and choose which laws they enforce or follow. And the only way that they get held accountable is sometimes in court, when the victims, so to speak, which would be us and every other county in Washington, has to challenge their actions. So I'm a very reluctant yes to the proposal, but I think that if they delay this by 6 months, I would like to spend whatever is necessary between now and then figuring out whether, there's a way to do this. And it may be discussions with our legislators, in addition to, teeing up a legal action.
Great. I know that we've discussed this with WASAC. This was one of the topics on a WASAC administrator's call. And Romero, has this been discussed with Deborah?
Yes, I have touched base with Deborah, and I totally agree with Commissioner Menser. We need to take a closer look how this falls within the unfunded mandate statute. And also, I believe we need to have a larger coordination with WASAC, because that impacts, obviously all 39 counties in the state. So this could, in a way, good to have 6 months to look into this particular issue, and it will give us time to look at the legal aspects of unfunded mandates and start coordinating with WASAC. But certainly, we're going to start highlighting when we meet with the local legislative delegation to start highlighting this particular example as an unfunded mandate.
Thanks. I do. Now you're reminding me of our previous discussion, and I know now you're reminding me that we kind of but we discussed that since this equally touches all the counties, we should be able to work with WASAC to develop a coordinated approach, because Wasatch's usually very sensitive to these types of issues. So.
Right. And Wasatch was successful in the unfunded mandate when the legislature required additional ballot boxes to be placed, and it was a successful legal challenge on that. And so I think we have a good precedent on that. So we need to continue on that path.
I think what the counties need is people with Commissioner Mentzer's mindset and experience protecting the counties and having the experience of what it means to the counties when these things fall down onto our laps. And again, as he kind of put it, we are the victim, counties are the victim. Commissioner Edwards, anything?
Well, I guess all of the topics you folks just talked about tie into what I'm going to ask, and maybe it'll make for a shorter question and answer. What are the other counties in the state doing that are faced with exactly this same issue? Have we got some kind of a consensus of what's going on? Have some just said, no, we're not going to do it, it's in violation of state law? Have they all knuckled under to the, the bully process, I guess? I'd like to know what others are actually doing about it. It sounds like everybody's talking about it, but what are others doing about it, or do we even know that?
I don't think, go ahead, Robin.
So it's my understanding that there was a joint letter from the courts across the state that addressed the fact that this was unfunded. And that's part of what led to the request for a delay in the implementation date. So I know that the courts across the state are actively protesting, if you will, the fact that this has come. The conversation in the administrators meeting that I was a part of was that, in all frankness, this is not the first unfunded mandate from the state of Washington, and counties are required to implement legislation that's passed by the state. So the conversation amongst the administrators is that they were working with their courts to try to estimate the cost and provide something in their budgets.
Yeah, I will venture to say that probably is the same position that you are in this morning, and very little option perhaps the counties have at this point, other than try to meet the requirements of the new law. So it is difficult, challenging, and this just came up this year with no warning in terms of the impact to the county's finances.
Well, my feeling on it is that if we continue to keep bending over every time the legislature comes up with something like this, and just don't put our foot down and say, no, we're not going to do it. Yes, I realize we're supposed to follow the law, but the law is being broken at the other end of the spectrum, if you will, because there's the unfunded mandate portion of it. So I would rather that we just say, no, we're not going to put any funding in this process, and no, we're not going to provide that service, and just see and use that as the impetus to get this moving forward in some kind of a challenge, and make an example about it, that we're not going to just bend over for these folks. I don't like the government walking on the little guy, and the county happens to be the little guy when it comes to the state pushing us around. And so I think we've got the protection of the law on our side. So that's where I'm at.
I'm kind of in between, and I'm going to use the analogy that both you, Gary, and Ty are using, that the counties are the victim. And I'll use the victim analogy. I don't like it when someone holds a gun to my head, figuratively, and I've never had one held to my head literally. But I've been trained in the defensive tactics to make sure nothing happens, and I flip that script where I'm not the victim anymore. But in this case, it doesn't seem that it seems like WASAC is our only defensive tactic here, legally, where we collectively as 39 counties go after this issue. But also in my opinion, I would think it'd be irresponsible not to put the money aside just in case, and if we don't need it, it's still there. If for some reason there's a court challenge and we get at the Supreme Court level, it's shoved down our throat, the money is there. We're not caught short-handed. So I'm not happy about this. I don't like it in any way, shape, or form. I also agree that it doesn't fit within the confines of legality when it comes to unfunded mandates. But I can't decide that. Those are for black robes to decide and judge, not me. But in the case it doesn't go our way, I'd like to have that money there so we're not caught by surprise. Still, with as we used many times yesterday, the word uncertainty, I'd rather have the certainty that the majority, at least a chunk of money, is there just in case we need it. And if we don't, yay, we win. Whew. But I don't want to be caught shorthanded or blindsided.
Okay. Either way we go, the money is going to be there. I mean, whether we have it designated or not, we have an ending fund balance and a beginning fund balance and all that we could draw it from. I just hate to acquiesce to those folks that are, you know, holding that gun. That's all. I don't like giving in to them.
Yeah.
Either way we do it, we're going to have the money. We're going to have to go make a budget amendment or something, and I think we ought to send them a bill for doing that when the time comes. Add to the cost. I just don't like it that we give in to them all the time.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Commissioner. Nobody likes it.
Well,
I don't think anybody in the screen in this meeting is very happy about this.
But the money's going to be there either way you look at it, and if we just go ahead and say, oh, okay, we're going to do it, well, we might have to do that farther down the road. But for right now, I'm not too interested in doing anything with it.
And the proposal is having a specific budget proviso just to make sure that, and you can probably work on the language of the proviso as to how you like to put a little more.
We have proposed language for you that you'll see this morning.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
I'll
go along with cooler heads then, I guess.
Well, I'm going to hear it from Ty.
I'll follow our in-house counsel.
Ty, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where Commissioner Edwards is coming from. I guess the question is whether it's it's true that if we can make a statement, so to speak, not put it in there, and then we're going to get a budget amendment. If it happens, we'll get a budget amendment from Superior Court. They don't have any choice. So I guess to me though, the question is that a meaningful action on our part? Does it make us feel better, or does it actually do anything? And I think the meaningful choice is to basically be willing to pursue a legal action if our partners with WASAC or our own legal counsel tell us that we have solid legal ground to stand on. And if that is true, then the meaningful thing to do is to stand up for the law, which if we believe that the law does not allow them to pass this cost on to us, and I don't have the RCW memorized, but whatever, if RCW blah 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 says that they cannot pass this cost on, then we have to stand up for that and be willing to do that. And that's the meaningful challenge, and that's what the once I hear from legal someone that's done the analysis, because I haven't, then that's the thing that would make this really would be, I think, what Commissioner Edwards is looking for, which is the little guy standing up to the big guy. Whether or not we earmark this money just for planning, it becomes a planning issue, just because he's right. We could just say, nope, not doing that. And then we're going to get a bill in maybe September because that went into effect in July, and then we have to pay it. But I think I'm on Hutch's side in the sense of, I'd rather be planning. I'd rather just be planning for that. And if we don't need it, then it's still there. And then the meaningful thing will be to pursue our legal rights to the extent we have them.
Yeah, pursue it, but then plan for the worst and expect the best, or hope for the best. Yeah.
Well, at least let's just harshly put a harsh statement in the letter or something. I mean, in the verbiage that we put together.
Yeah, we'll review the proviso in a minute. So,
Don't try to be politically correct. Just stick it to them.
Yeah, I like that.
Commissioner's arms are being twisted, and
Sadly, I don't think the legislature will read our budget.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Well, and whoever's the, on the legislative steering committee with Wasack next year, hammer it home.
Yeah.
yeah, we can
Send that
probably,
message and beat the drum.
yeah, we can probably put a bunch of symbols in the proviso just in case.
Yeah.
Good, okay. You got that
Okay.
one? You got what you needed from that, Robin?
I get a direction from the three of you that this okay to put this in the budget for Superior Court with a budget proviso.
Yeah, and I think 250 is probably reasonable enough. It's not too high, and it's definitely not the minimum.
Right. We'll have to, once it's implemented, we'll have to watch it and see what it really costs.
Right.
Yeah.
It could cost more. The court thinks it'll cost more. It could cost less, but this kind of gets the money in there for planning purposes.
Yeah. Romero, do you need thumbs up or down?
Can I say one more thing, Hutch?
Yeah.
I guess you're saying for 250 and it's kind of the middle of the road, that kind of stuff. I'd rather put in not enough if it was up to me, and just tell the court, well, if that isn't enough, you'll have to find your own budget. And hopefully they'll start putting up a big fight about this kind of stupid stuff themselves.
Well,
I
I don't know if that sends a
move the
message,
ball
but it hurts
forward.
them. Won't hurt them at all if we don't put in sufficient funding.
Well,
They won't care.
okay.
Anyway.
And
Obviously,
I
you
would
probably
say
don't
that the
want me
court,
on your legislative steering committee.
Yeah.
the court is making a fuss.
Okay.
By the way, the
Okay.
courts are making a fuss, which is why they're even considering a delay.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Yeah.
Romero, do you need up or down, or you got
Is
it?
up, thumbs up?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Reluctantly.
Okay, item number 2 is in your packet. There is a letter from Under Sheriff Brady. And what he is requesting on behalf of the sheriff is that you restore the funding for overtime. And you will recall that in the, I forget which budget amendment, I think it was budget amendment number 3, the board added funding in different amounts for the sheriff, and one of the items was for overtime. And then later in the year, when we reviewed those to determine which of those were intended to be one-time items, overtime was identified as a one-time item. So we, the budget team, took the money out of the budget for next year, just that increment, not all of the overtime budget, but just that increase. And the sheriff is requesting that that be restored to the 2021 budget. And what I don't have here is what the amount was.
Thank you,
someone-
Robert, for that. Before the clarification, because on the start of the paragraph number 3, it states one time, I would like to kindly request to revisit the elimination of an overtime budget. And as you heard from Robin, the board did not eliminate it, the sheriff's overtime budget.
Yeah, I highlighted that.
What the board decided was not to make the additional overtime request that you approved on the budget amendment number 3 to be an ongoing. But budget amendment number 2, I believe. Not to make it an ongoing.
Number 3.
3, okay, thank you. So that's really, make sure that that letter has, that sentence has a context.
Yes.
Yeah, I highlighted that sentence about the elimination of the overtime budget. That confused me. So I didn't think we had done that. And in reading Under Sheriff Brady's letter, I just go back to what Robin said yesterday, and I quote, "Big challenges are ahead." In January, we could not have anticipated the rioting and unrest downtown and all the other things that have come. And it states in the letter here, of course, the major crimes, natural disasters, calls for service, demonstrations, often involve shootings. there's no certainty in what's coming. You're only certain about what happened yesterday and in the past. Nothing about today and the future. So I think it's responsible to make sure there's overtime for the sheriff's department. As Undersheriff says, we're obligated to the citizens to be fiscally responsible, but it's also obligated to the citizens to be there when needed. And you can't always predict what these dadgum challenges are going to be, especially with national election, especially with the political issues that are causing unrest in the country nationally, with the pandemic. Who knows what's going to come? Businesses going out of business. I just want to be sure that there's money for the sheriff's department to responsibly fund these uncertain times that we're heading into. I made my political statement. So go ahead, Gary. Romero, someone.
Yep, I'm ready. Am I okay, sir, to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I agree with you, but also we as a county board sign a contract with the deputy sheriff's union. And so we agree when we sign that contract to whether it's, I don't know, minimum staffing, we're going to pay so much an hour for overtime, that type of thing. And then going back to the unknown that you're expressing, Chair, is I just think that he's going to have to come back and get it later. It's almost like the court thing. I mean, we're stuck with it. It's part of the cost of doing business. And so I would like to put it back in there as well.
Go ahead, Ty.
Okay, well, I had a few reactions to this. The first one was, I think, clarified by Ramiro and Robin that we didn't eliminate the overtime budget. We just clarified that the overage that we authorized, which was based on the civil unrest and those unusual things, we said okay to that. And that amount that's in, I asked the budget staff just so I had a sense of what the number is, and it's $512,000 or $514,000. So there's a base budget for overtime of over $500,000 to address various needs. The second thing, though, this is the most important thing to me, is that the sheriff's overtime budget year to year has not been adequate to meet his needs, and that's been based on because we've had the budget amendments and requests. And my understanding of that problem was that there was a staffing shortage, which the board, even in a pandemic and a difficult financial circumstance, we added 10 new positions to the sheriff's office this year. 3 of them relate to the new court space, but seven are just directed at trying to address this staffing shortage so that there would not be this need for additional overtime. That's why I didn't vote for all 7 or all 10, but I voted for a majority of them because I recognize that need, and I've been trying to hopefully get the sheriff's staff to where there isn't the perennial overages that we've seen, because that's not a good situation for them or the county or for the budget staff. So I think that needs to be considered when we think about whether or not we would want to increase. This is basically a 50% increase in the overtime budget. If we go from 514 and we add back in, I think it was 247,000, the memory I had. Budget staff's nodding. Okay, so that's a 50% increase in the overtime budget at the same time that we're adding 10 positions. I don't think that that's necessary. And then on top of that, we did some other things for the sheriff this year. We added their ER&R in, and there was a discussion about how much of that equipment would have come out of their normal budget. We did not make any corresponding reduction in their budget. We just gave them another $377,000 for ER&R. They said some of that equipment would come from grants, but not all of it, and we know that. So that's going to help them with their budget and hopefully any overtime issues that they may have. We also added in all the training that was requested, even though I'd kind of forgotten when we did that we already added training in the last budget amendment, and Ramiro reminded me that we made that one, we did agree to make permanent. And then we got another budget request for training, which we granted. So we've really beefed up the sheriff's training budget. So all of that, I think, needs to kind of factor into whether or not there's a need for a 50% increase in the overtime budget. And then, you know, there's just the overall, and then on top of all that, there's the overarching thing that that I'm not comfortable spending $1 more, especially in light of the pandemic, you know, responses, the $1 million a day or a month that we're going to have to foot the bill for the foreseeable future. So in light of everything going on, I think we did, I think the board did a really good job of meeting the sheriff's needs given our financial constraints. And I think that the things that we did are going to directly translate into helping him reduce his overtime needs, I hope. And if not, you know, then like Commissioner Edwards said, we'll take it up and we'll figure it out, because I'd like to get to a steady state where we don't have that that need. Unless, of course, there's weird stuff that, like Commissioner Hutchings said, you know, when there's weird stuff that no one could have possibly predicted, of course the board's going to support our law enforcement and public safety. So that's kind of my overarching thing. I don't, you know, I was confused right out of the gate by the undersheriff saying that we eliminated the overtime budget. I hope that was just a misstatement and he didn't think that that's true. And if he did, then hopefully he's relieved to find out that that's not what we did. But I think where we landed was the right place.
Maybe another piece of information. Could you tell us how much the sheriff's office reverting in 2020?
The potential reversion?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find that quickly.
By the way, while you're looking, that was a good analysis, Ty. Thank you for that. All that
So, as of August 31st, I don't have a more recent estimate from the sheriff's office, but as of August, they were estimating they would revert $515,000 this year.
Only, right?
In law enforcement only, an additional $463,000 from corrections, and that's before we increased their budgets for coronavirus relief.
Right. Very good. Okay, Gary, other thoughts?
Yes. First of all, I wanted to point out that the sheriff's budget is in two different segments of corrections and operations. And the total Commissioner Mentzer mentioned is the total, I guess, for both of those. And
No.
Oh, I'm
Not
in terms of
accurate.
positions that we added.
those positions that we added, that's the 10 positions, right, that you referred to, sir?
Yeah, that was combined. That was combined between the two.
Right. Okay, so some of those positions, like the three mentioned for the court and others within the jail facility, I mean, we're doing that to alleviate a litigation threat, if you will, that we face. I'm not saying they aren't needed there in the jail setting. They are. But we added those folks recognizing that's going to help us with our exposure. The rest of it is the cost of doing business, and I continually think that we are underfunding the sheriff's office. The ratio of officers per 1,000 population served, and that's just counting the unincorporated area of Thurston County. Out of 39 counties, we are 37 in that list, and we should be up at 7 if you were going to do it according to population. So we are really lagging on our support for law enforcement anyway, so that's why I continue to promote funding for the sheriff when needed, when it's justified, because we are not adequately funding him in the first place. And it sounds like he's trying to be a team player as far as reversion, getting the money back to us when needed. Probably doing more than some of the outfits, but he's got the bigger budget as well. anyway, so that's why I'm in line with Chair Hutchings.
This, Robin, or Romero, this letter speaks only for the sheriff's deputies, not for corrections, correct?
True.
Okay. And so we would imagine, even with a combined at this point, raw numbers that you have from September, Robin, we're looking at a reversion of just under $1 million, somewhere in that vicinity. I would imagine we will expect some type of amendment next year from corrections. I don't know. I have no idea of predicting that. But as Ty said, this will come back to us as an amendment next year if there's not sufficient funding. But I thought you were going to say the reversion was going to be about minimal, but 500 over 500,000 is kind of considerable. So I'm in favor. I'm glad haven't eliminated anything regarding overtime, but I'm in favor of giving them something, however we logistically or put that in there. Maybe not perhaps all of it, but something. I need to have them feel that they're covered.
Well, what is the amount then that he's asking for? And it sounds like we're headed towards some kind of a compromise here.
Was it about 500,000, 514 is what they had?
No, it's 250.
They already have 514 in the base, and I'm looking at Olivia to confirm the amount or Denise.
So it's a 250-ish?
So as far as the base goes, and this is for all of the sheriff's office, so Department 10, I would say it's roughly 800,000 total in 2020. So that would include the 246,000. So just say roughly $500,000.
But does that include last time I answered this question, I got an email from Heidi saying that when she has specific grants that she has to use overtime. So it inflates the overtime, even though we have revenue coming in to reduce it.
But it covers, it covers their overtime cost. So regardless of where the overtime's from, it's covered.
Overtime is overtime, and it's covered.
Right, overtime's overtime. So 500,000 roughly is in the sheriff's law enforcement budget for overtime. In 2020, you had added 240,000 one time, 247. And what the undersheriff is requesting appears to be a restoration of the full 247,000 on top of the 500,000 they already have in.
Okay, from my perspective, I want to go the full amount. That's kind of where I'm at. I know I'm not going to probably see a match from Commissioner Mentzer, but that's what this game is all about, is kind of trying to figure out and compromise who gets what, when, and where. So I would like to see it stay the full amount, because we're way underfunding the sheriff's office for what it needs in total when you compare our population against the rest of the law enforcement activities in this state. And I want to get that up so that we're not at the bottom of the barrel all the time.
Go ahead, Ty, you got something to add, I hope?
I think I've said my piece. I mean, the corrections, I know we're talking about law enforcement, but I know that there's been overtime with corrections as well. And what I heard the sheriff say, for example, in the budget hearings on Monday, was that now we fully, there was like 7 to 12 people that he wanted, and he got 7 at one point, and now he's gotten 4. And he said all he's down now from the complete 100% staffing model is a legal assistant. And so that's what he said on Monday. So, I mean, corrections, there shouldn't be any, I guess it's an indicator, and we're trying to do the same thing on the other side. We added road deputies. You guys voted for more than I did, but I voted for some too, because recognizing what Commissioner Edwards said. So I was hoping we were moving toward a situation where there'd be less need for overtime. And I'm not asking to reduce that budget, but I don't think we need to increase it by 50%. That was the overage that we authorized was based on unique circumstances of 2020. I don't expect them to necessarily repeat. And if they do, we'll fund it. But at this point, $514,000 for overtime when we've added 10 staff or however many to the law enforcement side, not 10, it's 3. I think it's 3 on that side and the others are to the correction side. But I think we should stand pat and then see where we're at. We are doing because again, I'm going to make the point. There's more money for the ER&R. There's more money for the training. We are moving in the right direction toward getting the funding, buttressed for the sheriffs so that they're at a stable situation. So I'm good with where we are. I don't want to increase the overtime budget for 2021.
So when I'm looking at this from the framework of the mindset of insurance, we have done quite a bit. This board's done quite a bit in the last year to assist the sheriff's budget issues, whether it be training, deputies, ER&R, all those issues. And we haven't seen yet, because it doesn't take effect till January, haven't seen the impact, positive or negative, but mostly a positive impact of those changes that this board has taken. And again, basing this on the uncertainty of the future, if we put in another 200,000 plus into that budget, if the sheriff just at this point, again, this is the last quarter, raw numbers is ready to revert $500,000+, maybe next year, this time next year, you'll be looking at a reversion of $250,000 he didn't need, or 500,000, because of all these other steps we've already taken, because they haven't been implemented yet. And we don't know what the actual impact will be. So I'm along the lines of just putting that insurance in there. I'd rather overinflate the mattress and not need it all, rather than have it to be too deflated. So I'm in favor of that, the 247. Hoping that next year at this time it will be reverted back into the budget. Because of all the other things.
If I may, keep in mind that this becomes a base budget that has an impact on the general fund. On the ending fund balance. It's not the impact on the ending fund balance in 2021. It's ongoing. So as you saw the graphs, it will have an impact. It will be a reduction on the ending fund balance come 2021, come 2022, and so on. So you're not, with your consideration, you're not just making a single year decision. And really whether they revert the money or not, is the impact on the overall. I just want to make sure that you look at the umbrella and you look at, it's not just a single year. It's not just 2021 that you're considering. It becomes a baseline and on the years to come. So,
could I have a comment on there, sir?
I'm getting that, yeah. Thank you, Romero. Go ahead, Gary.
Robin, what was November's sales tax receipt report?
$1.9 million.
Okay. How much more did we bring in for November than we did last year in November? Not what our estimate and all that stuff was. What's the difference in actual revenue that has come in?
As I reported at the budget hearings yesterday, it is 10% over November of last year, and we continue to be tracking very close to our pre-pandemic forecast.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that I still think we're going to have revenue coming in, and we've got more revenue than we've ever had, ever. We've got more, even though we've got the pandemic. I'm not saying that isn't serious, but we got more revenue than we've ever had, and I really believe that as we have more revenue, we should put it to try and alleviate that situation of being at the bottom of the barrel for the sheriff's office. We have the resources to do it. Let's put it in there. If we get it back on a reversion, fine. But I want to try to recognize those law enforcement officers for what they're doing in our community. So that's where I'm at.
So just to clarify on the sales tax revenue, the amount that we've received so far this year is tracking very close to what we expected to receive this year and what this year's budget was based on. We're not collecting more than we thought we would. We're collecting more than we thought we would once the pandemic kicked in, but we're tracking close to the pre-pandemic forecast.
Can I get one more question in time?
Yeah.
CRF money can only go towards the virus or the COVID related type activity. Remind me, did the sheriff's office receive any CRF money?
Yes, we paid for hazard pay in the sheriff's office. Let me see if I can, I don't have that number broken down to say exactly how much went to the sheriff's office.
The only reason I ask is just in my head that popped up. I remember the hazard pay, of course, but I was wondering if they received other funding. Should there be another federal relief package coming, which sounds like there may be. I didn't know if that would be something that would also be that we could use as backup, perhaps as a fallback position. While you're looking at it or thinking about it, go ahead, Ty.
I just wanted to respond to the idea that we have so much revenue coming in, and Robin kind of hit on that by saying it's where we thought we were pre-pandemic, which is more than we thought mid-pandemic, but it's not covering $1 million a month in pandemic response, which has been covered by federal money so far. But we've only set aside $2 million for that. And that is going to be gone potentially in the end of February. And then this expected sales tax revenue is not going to cover what our needs are going to be at that point. And even without that, the graph that we've been, the graph that I always keep as our summary of everything in the general fund, where you've got the revenue lines and the bar graph showing the fund balance. It's still, even without that graph assumes that we're going to have no more than $2 million of pandemic response in 2021. And even with the revenue projections that we have now that are updated, and even so, our fund balance is projected in 2 years to be in right at the black line that we've been trying to avoid for so many years. So, and I think that that's probably going to turn out to be an optimistic overall picture based on what we get from the federal government for additional pandemic response, if anything, and revenue projections and financial considerations. Because there's so many things that have been propped up in 2020, and whether it's eviction, rent assistance, whether it's unemployment benefits extended, whether it's micro grants to businesses, whether it's CARES money to local governments. I don't think the level of propping up this economy is going to continue into 2021. I just don't think it can. So anyway, I need to respond to this idea that we're just flush with cash in Thurston County, and this is not the situation.
Did you find something, Robin?
On the COVID money, on a report from late November, the amount that had gone to corrections was roughly a little over 200,000 and that was not corrections. My apologies. That was for law enforcement.
Hazard pay you're talking about?
Yeah, got the hazard.
That was what was eligible in the sheriff's office, was the hazard pay. There may have been other incidental items in the sheriff's office, COVID by department. No, those are other funds. I would say that the majority of it was probably hazard pay.
So the There is 500,000 in their overtime budget currently. And the undersheriff was under the impression the elimination of the overtime budget. So I'm trusting he's watching this, or Heidi, someone is, so that they know that the overtime budget has not been eliminated. There's 500,000. But looking at the fourth paragraph, the first sentence, the undersheriff says, "I'm concerned that we will be again be required to come in they'll require additional support in 21." The next sentence, "I truly appreciate what we have been awarded." And I'm taking that as all the work that the board has done over the last year to assist the sheriff's office. But he also wants to make sure if funding is available, we're in the best position to stay within our allotments. So let me look at that word if funding is available. And so we have two routes to go. And number one route would be put the 250,000 in there. Okay. Or it'll come back as a budget amendment again. And if the money is available, it will be awarded then. Is that too simplified or too simplistic, Robin?
So something we could do that we've done in the past is you could put money in non-departmental earmarked for the sheriff's office with a proviso that says that should the sheriff come the end of the year, if the sheriff's budget is overspent, that money would be available to cover bottom line over expenditures, not line item over expenditures. But if there were no, if he was in a negative position, that would cover him, or the money just would not be spent. So that is also an option.
That's an option, okay. Gary?
Well,
And Ty, I'll ask you for your thoughts on that, Gary.
it sounds like we're doing the same thing we're doing for Superior Court. We're putting that money aside for that amount, that need, if you will. Let's do the same thing with the sheriff. Put the money aside that he needs, and okay, you can put a proviso in there. He can't buy an airplane or whatever, but you can use it if needed. Kind of the same concept. We're putting money aside because of a potential need in Superior Court. Well, let's put the money there in case the sheriff does need it for coverage.
Rather than allot it in the budget for years to come.
Well, I just want to get them above the bottom of the barrel. I don't see why we're in the capital county and we cannot have at least be close at mid-range. Let's try to get mid-range. I obviously want them at the top, but let's try to get mid-range instead of the bottom of the barrel. And if we keep squeezing them, they're always going to have to keep coming back. That's all. It's just the way it is. I've been in those shoes before. You try to do the best job you can with what you've got, but it's inevitable that you have to take care of business out in the community. I don't think I want to be in a position where I'm going to tell a citizen, sorry your daughter got raped. We're not working on that one. I don't know, that's an extreme, I'm sure,
Yeah, that is an extreme.
It is an extreme. I know it is, but we are in a situation where we're making priorities all the time. The community is asking that we do a better job with law enforcement, and we're giving them some training, but it's minimal training if you look at it compared to the agency. I think we should always strive to do better, and I think we can do better. But we're not just going to have sales tax. We're going to have new construction, lots of it, I hope. We've got some other things percolating for us. I do think we're going to get some assistance from the feds, it looks like. If nothing else, they'll be printing more money. It might not be worth as much, but we're going to get some, I'm pretty sure.
Ty, what do you think of Robin's offer?
Well, I don't think it's analogous. I mean, the analogy to the Superior Court is when the sheriff got that mandate for the background checks on firearms and got the I-940 training requirements, and we funded that. Didn't even blink. New unfunded mandate. It's gonna, obviously it's not gonna help him meet his staffing needs. He's got to do it. We funded it. That's what we're doing for Superior Court. This is this ongoing issue of overtime and staffing, and I mean in all the amendments that I've sat through over the last 2 years, the sheriff's gotten the bulk. I mean, it's just the reality. I'm not trying to pick on the sheriff's office at all. They had the needs, but they got the bulk of a lot of the amendments, the money. We went through that in nauseating detail for that June one, when we were doing the budget cut stuff and the 2%. And now in the 2021 budget, we have, pretrial services did pretty well with its 4 positions, but other than them, no other department got 10 new positions added in. I mean, the assessor got 1, and I think public health got 1 or 2, and public works got 2 or 3. So, we were very responsive to that need, and that's directly going to this issue. And so, yeah, I don't think, and I'm worried about the point Ramiro made about, it's not to put it in there, then if it turns out they don't need it and we try to take it out, then we are going to get a letter from the undersheriff saying you're trying to eliminate part of our budget, because now their base budget is 750. We try to dial it back to 500 next year. We're going to get a nasty letter, understandably, because we're cutting back on the base. So, I think we've taken the steps to make sure that they're not. We've taken steps to not ensure, but to help increase our chances of them not needing an overtime budget, because that's not the right way to do things. We all know that. And then, if that doesn't cut the mustard, then we'll revisit it next year. But I think we've done what we needed to do with the resources that we have to be respectful and responsible with our sheriff's budget.
I agree with that. Looking forward to see if the board were to reduce, then there would be an uprising. But what I got from you, Robin, is that wouldn't be the case. This money would not. It would be set aside somewhere with a proviso. Where would that be sitting? In their overtime budget, where it would look like we're cutting it back?
No, I'm proposing that you put that money in non-departmental.
Thank you, yeah.
So that it would only become available to the sheriff if he were in an overspend position for his entire department in law enforcement.
And so it would not be the situation where they could make the argument, hey, you're cutting us back even further. But it would be there just in case. I like that idea.
Okay.
I think Robin froze up.
It just gives them the insurance. It's there, but it's not built into their budget.
Robin's connection froze up.
No, she's there.
Oh,
No one's frozen, just no one's talking. But I see here from the other commissioners, what do you think of that, Ty? Because you were the most recent one to speak about the increasing their budget by 250 and then pulling it back, and the torches that be thrown at the BoCC.
I prefer that to building it into the base at the same time that we're adding lots of positions. So, but I still don't think we need to do that until, like you say, we've done a lot of changes. We haven't implemented them. We don't know. I did want to say this on the sheriff's behalf, that when they came in with their budget request that was kind of controversial in end of 2019, they were able to make adjustments, and we funded almost all of that. I think we cut it by just a little bit, but they were able. My understanding from the sheriff is that they were able to make adjustments and vastly reduce the quote unquote overspending. It didn't end up being $500,000. They were able to cut that down considerably, which I have a lot of respect for that, because that saved the taxpayers money and was doing trying to react to a situation. And then this year, we don't have that request. We had the budget amendment and that, but there were some extenuating circumstances, and we're hearing that there's going to be a reversion. And I understand. I'm not counting on that. I'm not counting on the sheriff has to revert money. That's, he just has to stay in his budget lane. And if he can't revert anything, then that's okay. He's not required to. So anyway, I want to say all that because some of the citizens that commented to the sheriff was kind of upset about, during the budget hearing, were upset about the overage. And I don't think it was publicly known that he whittled that down quite a bit. And the overage was quite a bit less than he originally came in thinking he would need. So anyway, all of that to say that, it wasn't that bad in 2019 as we thought, and 2020 is turning out okay. The board made the appropriate adjustment for some of the unusual circumstances. Now we've added positions, and I think that that's going to make a huge benefit toward the overtime needs. And so I just don't see the need to do this. And
I would
frankly,
agree
given
that-
that, yeah, sorry.
I would agree with the adding positions, but as we add positions to alleviate that bulge in the budget and that pressure, people leave. And so he's always one-upping. It's always just a revolving door. And I'm not looking through this, or looking at this through rose-colored glasses. And I really hope the implementations of these things that we've done this year will really assist in a positive way the sheriff's budget overall. And I would like to have the sheriff, and this is just simplistic again, take a relief and say, a sigh of relief, the money's there if I need it. It's not built in the budget, but it's there if I need it. They have the support, but it's just not in that budget. I'll get to you, Gary, after I get to Robin.
So I would also like to just say that for every office and department, they have an opportunity, if they're unable to manage within the amount given them in appropriation, to come in the final budget amendment and request additional appropriation so they can make it through the year. Every office and department has the opportunity to do that. You're doing that in this amendment for the coroner. So if it is your pleasure to earmark an amount for the sheriff, then you should do that. But at the same time, he has the same opportunity that all the offices and departments do that would meet the need of this proviso.
Right, I get that. Thank you. And I think of it in terms, we have the letter saying, man, we can't plan for the unknown. This is what's happened in the past. And they're asking for a chunk of dough. I would love to say, here's a check. We just wrote a check for you if you need it. But it's going to sit in the office over here, and there's no date on it yet. So it's there if you need it, but it's not yours. Just a little bit of insurance and show support rather than just, okay, well, here's a blank check, or here's a check for $250,000. I don't want to do that. But have it set aside for them. But they do, I understand that, Robin. They have the same option for amendments as everybody else does. Gary?
Yeah, I'm with you, sir.
Okay, so let's wrap this one up. Are you put it in the non-departmental with a proviso?
So is
247 2.
So, what I'm hearing is Commissioner Hutchins and Commissioner Edwards would like to set aside $247,000, place it in non-departmental with a proviso that they only will be used in the event the sheriff's office runs out of expenditure authority on his overall law enforcement budget. And that can be accessed only at the end of next year.
If they need it, yep.
So it's not limited to overtime at this point?
correct.
Correct.
Okay. Well,
Because
That is what I understand the conversation is.
I didn't understand the conversation to be that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought that was for overtime.
the reason that I'm proposing it that way broadly is because currently what every office and department does is if they're overspent in one area, you're probably underspent somewhere else, and you use that to balance your budget. Budgets are a plan or an estimate, and maybe you're going to be a little underspent in equipment, maybe you're going to be overspent in overtime or extra help. Maybe the extra help's going to be underspent. Maybe we budgeted too much for benefits. It all balances out, and that's how managers manage their budgets. So to put something in specifically for an overtime line is not allowing for the way we do budgets in Thurston County at the bottom line.
That flexibility and Chief Heidi Thompson knows exactly what she's doing.
Yeah,
But then you have no incentive to manage. Then I mean, you might as well just add that money into their budget. They have no incentive not to find. Then it's just anything that they want that they can access that money, not limited to this overtime question, which has been the entire basis for this hour-long conversation. And that's a totally different thing, in my opinion.
no,
That's just a blank. That's just a $250,000 blank check into their budget.
that's what I wanted to clarify. What is the direction?
Wow, that was a nuance.
Your market for overtime, it will absolutely be spent.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the undersheriff's request is, overtime.
But just to elaborate on what Robin said, no department, no office and department manages their budget at a line item basis.
Yeah. Wow.
Nobody does that. That's not a practice that anybody does. And that's what is always managing on the overall budget, and they have the latitude, every office and department, to move funds around based on their needs as they occur during the year.
So now that we've gone full circle, the undersheriff is saying, hey, since you eliminated, please, we need the money if it's available. The overtime budget has not been eliminated. And if there's money available, they'll put in for an amendment. We've spent an hour and 10 minutes now on what? Because it's just adding another $250,000 to the sheriff's budget completely, which I'm not totally opposed to, but that's not the intent of what we've been, the letter. It's not the intent of what we've been discussing.
Hang on just 1 second.
Okay. You talking to me?
No, he was answering a phone call.
I'm sorry.
I know that. I know that. Is he muted now or his things off?
He's just stepping out for a second.
Perhaps this would be a good opportunity for a short break.
Thank you. Let's do that. We're going to be in recess for 10. Let's do 10 minutes. Okay. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So we'll be back at 10:20. We're in recess till 10:20. Thank you. Welcome back after a brief break, and we're continuing on with the budget discussion regarding the sheriff's request and increase in budget. And
Allow me to recap, if I may.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So the conversation you started maybe 40 minutes ago or so was related to the letter that you received from the undersheriff, and the undersheriff was requesting, and it was a clarification on his third paragraph, that it was not elimination of the overtime budget, but I believe he was requesting for you to make not a one-time, the additional funding of $247,000 in overtime, the board approved in 2020, to make that an ongoing. So the board had a conversation in those terms. In the last few minutes, Commissioner Menser provided his perspective that perhaps with additional sheriff deputies and correction officers, an attempt to alleviate some of the overtime needs. Commissioner Edwards stated that he believes the undersheriff continues to be underfunded, and we need to do whatever we can to make sure that his needs are met. Commissioner Hutchings, I believe, would look at that perspective. They wanted to make sure that their needs are taken care of in a way in 2021. The result of that conversation, we started exploring a couple of options. One is to add the $247,000 to the overall budget, or perhaps just setting aside on non-departmental with a proviso. And I think how we left it at the end of before the break was that if we was to put a non-departmental, the $247,000 with a proviso, that my observation was to leave it as a bottom line in the event the sheriff will need on his overall budget. As I stated before the break, every office and department manages not their budget at a line item basis. They manage it at the bottom line. So, and that is just common practice. I believe that's how we left it. I don't think the board got to a conclusion on this item, so I just want to encapsulate what I believe I've heard over the last 45 minutes. But if I missed anything, please correct me.
All right. Do you have your pen out, Romero?
Yes, I have it right here.
I've had time to contemplate all the discussion and the meaningful talking points I've received from my seatmates. And what we were kind of doing was alluding to having a post-dated check off to the side for the sheriff's office. We have in this county, our electeds and our directors, everybody is exceptionally smart. And they're going to see this, they're watching it, they're listening, or they're going to hear about it. So we would end up, I believe, if we did this, with post-dated checks all over the place. And I don't think that's a good way to set policy for the county. And we are policymakers. And right now, with the undersheriff realizing hopefully that the overtime budget has not been eliminated, and maybe recapping before he was undersheriff that all the changes this board has made to the sheriff's office that has not come to fruition yet, have not been implemented. It may or may not be needed, but the sheriff, as with the treasurer, the assessor, prosecuting, everybody would have, the elected officers would have, they have the same, and every department, they have the same opportunity to a budget amendment. And so rather than just show support now by putting a blank check, that means we do that for every other department and or office or not? Does that show support or lack of? I'm now thinking of, as a policy setter, rather than altering policy and setting a new course, say, okay, well, the overtime has not been eliminated and we've implemented these changes. Let's see how this pans out over the next year with even all the uncertainty. And if you need additional money, come back with a budget amendment, just like everybody else does. That's where my head is right now.
Could I
Gary, go ahead.
make a comment on that, sir?
Yeah.
I guess being we couldn't come to a solution on, it sounds like the full amount, whether we put it back in the budget or whether we did that post-dated check analogy you used. How about if we, because in my estimation, it was never about the total overtime budget being eliminated. It was always about the 247 as pointed out by the county manager. Why don't we split the baby, if you will, and just put 125 back in the overtime and just let it go at that, see if that doesn't work. We're covering everything, recognizing everybody's point of view. I know that Ty is not going to be thrilled about this, but with your original statement that you wanted to do something, I want to do something, I can't get what I want either. A bit of a compromise maybe between the two of us and respecting Ty's position.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to get to Ty, but I appreciate that, your comments. However, it just goes back to the, even if it's just $37.50, it's setting a new policy. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable doing that. Go ahead, Ty, if you have something.
I don't really have anything. I mean, I'm working toward, the need to reduce the overtime budget, not increase it. And it's, what like you say, anything we increase just becomes the baseline for next year. And I'm hoping we're moving toward, you're never going to eliminate overtime, as I guess Chief Thompson was saying. There's grants and things that require it, and there's needs for it, frankly. I mean, I don't know what a perfect overtime budget is, but it's something substantial. But hopefully, but what I've heard the sheriff say over the last 2 years is that, if they had the staffing that he'd like, they wouldn't have such a high overtime amount. And if I take him at face value on that, and if that's true, then hopefully the things that we've done in the last year and with this budget will help. So I personally don't see the need to increase the overtime budget when we're trying to go the other way.
Over the last 4 years, I have always been, and over the last 4 years, I've been very supportive of the sheriff's office, over and above supportive of the sheriff's office, and that's not wavering. But when it comes to my role as a county commissioner, again, I have to look at the overarching policy setting for the entire county. And after giving it some due thought and consideration, I'm not sure I want to do that, setting aside a blank check or a post-dated check, because that opens the door. That might cause the future board or boards, more headache than preventing or solving issues. Because everybody has the same avenue for a budget amendment, and it can be turned up or down, or it can be mitigated somehow. And so,
Sir,
with all due respect to the sheriff and the undersheriff.
Sir.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I want to be respectful to Commissioner Edwards' proposal. He put on the table for the board to consider 120,000.
I was just trying to say half,
120,000 on the overall budget. I'd like to hear that proposal being supported or not. I see.
That would still be a blank check set aside, correct? Gary, that's the same. They're not blank check.
His proposal, as I understanding, is to add $127,000 to the overtime budget of the sheriff's office.
Yes, that was my proposal.
That's his proposal. I just want to make sure that I'm respectful to that proposal, and the board has the opportunity to support it or not.
All right. I got the thumbs up.
Yeah. Okay.
And if there's reversion, there's reversion. If not, there will be no budget amendment, hopefully.
Okay, let's go. We got it.
All right, Robin, next. And you're muted. Yep.
All right. So we will increase the sheriff's budget by 120,000. Going on to the next item, I got to get a bunch of stuff off my screen. The next item is to open for discussion amongst yourselves whether or not there is any other change you would like to make on this budget. Any other final changes to the budget based on any testimony you might have heard or any other information you may have received?
Ty, I'll start with Ty.
I'm going to throw this out there here, even though I thought I was going to be supportive, and I'm not sure where I stand, but I'm still undecided enough to ask my seatmates 2 cents. I'm a lot more concerned than I was a week or so ago in learning more about, where we're headed with pandemic response expenses, which is why I'm kind of backtracking, but I'm still going to throw this out here for discussion. When I was resistant to certain proposals to, when we discussed restoring the 2%, and part of that was because most of the departments did not address their needs in that way. They made separate specific requests, kind of presuming that they would not be, operating with the restoration of 2%. The only exception to that was the Treasurer's Office, which didn't make any policy requests whatsoever, but did in his formal presentation to us, say that what request he would like to have is the 2% restored, which for his office is $25,000. And he may not need it, but he may need it. That's kind of what we did for the coroner. And so I had thought that I was going to make a motion to restore that in the case of the Treasurer's Office. Not 100% sure now, but I'm going to throw that out there for discussion. If you guys were strongly supportive of it, I could probably be persuaded. There's nothing else that I heard. I don't know if this is the right time for talking about the public testimony. Robin's nodding her head.
Yes, it is.
So, Commissioner Edwards wasn't there, so I can hopefully recap it for him pretty quickly. 99% of our public input we got was from Mr. Pettit. His input, he talked about being a numbers cruncher and how he was critical of us for not having a balanced budget without the road shifts and diversion. And at one point he said, "You won't hear me. I'm a conservative, and you won't hear me asking for more to spend more money." But actually, that's pretty much all I heard was Mr. Pettit wanting to spend more money. Without any, for example, he wants substance use treatment, extremely ramped up and robust substance use disorder treatment for everyone who's involved in the criminal justice system. If you remember, he said that the micro shelters that we're supporting with Olympia wouldn't be fit for his chickens, and we should be building housing for these people. He wants a minimum of $8 million in 2021 spent on the building maintenance on buildings 1, 2, and 3. He wants a district court, a brand new wing of family and juvenile court built for district court, which would be tens of millions of dollars. He wants a lot more road deputies, more corrections officers for the sheriff. He wants more public health response. He asked Shelley to find more resources to increase her operations. He wants more money for emergency management. He wants a lot more chip sealing of county roads. So if you add all that up, it's tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. But then he opposes the 1% property tax increase, says we're charging too much in community planning and economic development for our fee structure for permits. Doesn't support, as we've heard, I think this didn't come up in the budget hearings, but we've heard it from Mr. Pettit before. He doesn't agree with the fees that we charge for water quality in the Shellfish Protection District. Does not want the impact fees. Does not agree with our road shift, levy shift, or the road diversion. Doesn't support a criminal justice sales tax. we know he doesn't support a transportation benefit district taking any steps to increase revenue. We know he doesn't support a levy shift to the voters to increase money for facilities. So there wasn't any. So the sum total of public comment was that there was a lot of a desire for more spending. Virtually no proposals for cuts in spending. Opposition to any revenue increases. The only revenue idea that I heard from Mr. Pettit during the 2 days of testimony was he asked Director Shelley Slaughter to, find some money in someone's pocket. He said that was the best revenue producing idea that I heard. And the federal government can run deficits. Conservatives, like a lot of conservatives, it's spend, but with no provision for a proposal to how to pay for any of it. And the federal government can just run deficits and print money, but the county government doesn't have that luxury. So I heard a lot of interesting comment. That was about it. The only other thing you missed, Commissioner Edwards, was a couple of people upset about the sheriff's office overspending. A little bit of comment about impact fees and how developers should pay for the growth that they're promoting in the county. Existing citizens shouldn't have to pay for new development when they've been here and they pay their taxes. That was about it. A good summary of 10 hours worth of public testimony and hearings that we spent over 2 days. None of that really makes me feel like I have any latitude to really do anything different than what the board did. I've said before, I feel like in light of new information about pandemic, the pandemic rages on in a way that I'm really did not predict. I thought we'd be in a better position in December of 2020 than we are. I thought with the measures that the state took in the spring, and we opened back up in the summer, and things were being worked on, and I think everybody believed that when we got to phase 3 and we felt like we were on the verge of phase 4 at the end of the summer, that we weren't going to look back. But we've had to lock down, and the graphs are just going out of control. So that really calls into question for me the entire approach, frankly, of some of our spending decisions. But I'm going to stand pat. I'm certainly not going to engage in the spending spree that was proposed in the public comment. And we're just going to have to hope for the best, carefully monitor and track where we're at as we go along in a way that, we always do that to some degree, but we're going to have to do that in a really careful basis to make sure that we keep the county financially healthy and as healthy as we can under these trying circumstances. So that's all the background for why I'm going to take the position that unless somebody wants to twist my arm for an extra 2% for the treasurer, I'm going to stand pat with the decisions that we've made. We did not fund, I'm kind of repeating myself from last night because Commissioner Edwards wasn't there, but we got very conservative requests on core needs. We agreed to fund about a third of that. That always creeps a little. We've just added $500,000 this morning because of the sheriff and the Superior Court and a few other things that are in the, there's always creep, but we tried to stay restrained and protect our fund balance. We know there's going to be budget amendments of various types, whether it's a legislative, who knows what unfunded mandates are going to come from the next session and other, unexpected things. So, if you pick a maximum you want to spend and then you spend all that, what I've learned in the last 2 years as a commissioner is that that's probably not the right way to go about things. You probably should back that off by 30% because you're going to get amendments and requests and unforeseen things. That's going to push you over the comfort level. But we are where we are. I'm comfortable with what we've done given the uncertainties. So I don't have any other things that I want to change in response to the public comment.
That was a very nice narrative and encapsulation. And in the, I would just add 2 things. So number one, Mr. Pettit in his in excess of an hour and a half of allotted public comment time it was all lost when his last sentence showed a complete lack of respect and decorum. So with regard to the restoring the 2% for the treasurer, I'm okay with that because to me, $25,000 is budget dust. But it's going to be the majority of the board that will decide that. And I understand your position that you're taking on that, Ty. Now I'll turn to Commissioner Edwards, see what he may have to say.
Yes, I think that Treasurer Gadman has done an excellent job managing his budget, and I am willing to get involved in that spending spree with Commissioner Menser. So it sounds like we would have a unanimous vote on that reinstatement.
Do we? Were you okay with that, Ty? I thought you changed your mind. Okay, good.
Okay, so just to make sure that I have you, we'll add an additional $25,000 to the treasurer's budget.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I'm very thrilled for the coroner as well. That makes me happy.
So
Gary, did you have any budget changes or you like to add or did decrease
No,
or talk
sir.
about?
No, and I in fact did, we do YouTube around here, so.
So
You saw some of that?
let me summarize before Robin moves to the next section of your conversation. The board decided on a 3-0 vote to add $250,000 to the Superior Court budget with a proviso. They only will be used to the guardianship new unfunded mandate. We will follow up with, related to that item, we'll follow up with Washington State Association of Counties to see how we can engage on that, whether it's a legal action or perhaps a legislative action to help us address this unfunded mandate. The board, on a 2-1, Commissioner Menser voted no, will add $120,000 to the overtime budget to the Sheriff's Office Law Enforcement. And the board voted on a 3-0, unanimous. They will add $25,000 to the Treasurer's Office budget. And that's the only changes that I track that you would like to see on your final document.
I just want to, for clarification, you said 25,000 to the treasurer?
Yeah.
Okay. I wrote it down that we were talking about that, but I thought I heard 75.
No,
Okay,
25. It's 25.
Okay. That's how I have it. Yep. All three of those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the next document in your packet. It's the one that has resolution number attachment B. We'll be filling in the resolution number when we get close to next Friday. And I'm going to share my screen so the public can see what you're talking about here. There we go. All right. So we're sharing these with you now just to make sure that you're comfortable with the language and that we haven't missed anything that we've discussed having provisos in the last few months. So the first provision is that at any point in time, the board may require approval prior to having an office or department fill a vacant position. And what this does is just preserve your opportunity to impose a hiring freeze if you should choose to do so. We've put this proviso in the budget every year for I don't know how long, but it has been there since I've come to the county 10 years ago. I'm going to move through these the same way I do through budget proposals. If you would like to discuss it, please stop me. If I don't hear anything from you, I'm going to assume it's okay. So number 2 is the provision that $100,000 that the county receives in millage that goes to public health. This is part of your property tax levy, that we transfer $100 million of that to the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Service Organization.
100,000.
Yeah,
Yes,
you said 100 million. I'm just gonna ask.
yeah, I'd love to have 100 million to share. Wouldn't we all love that? So where do I think I am, the state? So this is 100,000 of what we collect goes to the BHASO. Thank you, Denise, for updating that title so that it's correct. They can only use it to provide services to people with mental health issues, and that's in accordance with state law. And then the payments are made in April and November, which is when we are flush with property tax payments. Item number 3, the county receives it's revenue sharing with the state for liquor excise tax. And part of the requirements that come with the profit sharing for liquor is that 2% of it must be spent on behavioral health. So the county passes the entire 2% to the BHASO to spend on alcoholism or drug addiction programs. And that was an agreement that we made when the BHO split from the county. So we continue to do that. Item number 4 is the provision that the position that was approved for a school resource officer for the North Thurston School District is only authorized as long as the school district is paying at least 75% of the cost. That is a proviso that's in, excuse me, the current year budget, and we continue that into the future. And number 5 puts the same conditions on the new position that you're approving for the school resource officer for Rochester schools, that the school district needs to provide 75% of the cost, and if they should fail to do so, that position would no longer be authorized. Number 6 is the proviso that again is currently in your budget, that for the positions that were authorized for involuntary treatment, those were authorized, boy, I can't remember now if those were this year or last year. I think they were last year, that the BHO must pay for those positions, and that the expenditure for those positions cannot exceed the revenue that we receive to pay for them. Item number 7 states that the payments to TCOM 911 will not exceed the revenue that we receive. And we were in a position last year where we received more tax than we had appropriation authority to pay out. And that was after the last budget amendment. And we had to do some interesting maneuvering to be able to pay TCOM 911 their full amount of revenue. So what we're doing now is we're budgeting more than we think we're going to get, but this proviso makes clear that we're not paying the budget amount. What we're paying is the actual revenue that we receive. Item number 8 is that same thing for the tourism promotion area. We're budgeting high so that we have the capacity to pay out everything we receive. Sadly for the VCB, that's going to be less than the budget, considerably less than the budget this year, but we are hopeful that tourism bounces back next year. Item number 9 provides $15,000 solely for to pay for a ballot measure for the criminal justice sales tax. That is only if the board should decide to put such a measure on the ballot. And if this money is not spent for that purpose, then it won't be spent for any purpose. The appropriation will lapse. Item number 10, same type of thing, only for a ballot measure for Medic 1. Now, there's quite a bit of price difference in those, and we would need to ask the auditor to explain why the amount for the general fund is so much lower than Medic 1. But again, if the measure doesn't go on the ballot, the entire appropriation will lapse, and anything that is not spent also shall lapse. So this money is solely for the ballot measure.
Robin, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Who spends this money? Like, why does that second sentence need to be there? Like, aren't we the ones spending it, or are we giving it to someone else to spend?
So the appropriation is in the budget, and because of the way we budget at the fund department level, not the line item level, if this money were in, let's say, the Medic 1 budget, they could spend it on anything. But with the proviso, it makes it clear that they can only spend this money on this particular thing.
What about, okay, I understand that. What about criminal justice sales tax?
So that is an appropriation in non-departmental. And so this prevents me from using that 15,000 on something else the board might want.
Okay. If it were within the county commissioners, I guess, then it would be kind of strange, because we would be able to spend it on whatever we want, right?
You would be able to spend it on whatever you wanted without this proviso. But even in the commissioner's office, the proviso would restrict you from spending it on something else.
Okay.
That's the purpose of a proviso. Number 11 is for 300,000. That is solely for the climate mitigation plan. And again, that it's clear that that can't be used for any other purpose. And I have a question for the board. Did you want to include language to this proviso that it is dependent on participation from other jurisdictions?
It's a good question. When I read that and at face value, I would think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Ty or Gary?
Yes, I'm good with that. I think we did the same thing on another financial commitment we made to move the plan forward, I believe. But Ty was the one who put this in here, so I'd like to hear from
I
him.
believe this is a little bit different than that.
This is different.
So
Yeah,
go ahead, Ty.
So, yeah, it was appropriate in the other instance because the whole point of the other money was to launch a regional clean energy program. So without the regional, buy-in, it was not necessarily any point, although we've got a request to repurpose that money, but that's a different conversation. This, if the county adopts the plan, then I don't think that we are necessarily, our actions are hamstrung or limited by what the other jurisdictions do. We can move forward on implementing measures, even if say Lacey, for example, didn't adopt the plan. There is going to be, phase 3 is going to propose that there be an ongoing kind of, if you will, steering committee, or I think they call it a CAIC, Climate Action Implementation Committee or something. There is conceived to be an ongoing multi-jurisdictional implementation, but I don't think that there may be, if we adopt the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, then we can choose. It's really, I think it's up to the board what we want to spend in terms of implementing the strategies. There may be certain ones that we decide not to implement unless the other jurisdictions are going to do the same, but there might be other ones that we do want to do, like, for example, our own, maybe upgrading our own buildings, or I don't know what all's in the plan off the top of my head, but I wouldn't necessarily think we would need that proviso limitation on this one.
Is that part of that 300,000? Is that to fund a consultant and study and put the plan together, or is that that would be the committee, steering committee?
Well, no, I think that, so my conception of this is just a chunk of money. I mean, we have a phase 3 is going to propose a 0.25 staffing commitment for each jurisdiction. So I'm assuming we're going to have a staffing element. We're going to have, it could be anything. It could be hiring a consultant. It could be, there's money that TRPC is going to, all the jurisdictions would be committing to doing some, I think what you're referring to, Hutch, is the phase 3 TRPC contract. That's only going to ask us for about 37,000 or something like that. So, and I would imagine we would pull from this pool of money. It's really a pool of money for any variety of actions that we might want to take, that the board would still have the authority to take or not take.
Okay. Gary?
Yeah, I'm okay with going with Ty's recommendation.
Yep. That's
Okay.
3-0.
And we'll leave it the way it is. Item number 12 is the proviso regarding a new Superior Court judge. If the state legislature does not approve a new judicial officer, then this $16,000 shall not be spent. Number 13 is regarding extension dates of these positions. And Denise, can you remind me which department or office these positions are in?
It's in public health, and they were contingent on receiving grant money.
Right. So I'm going to add that these positions are in public health, just for clarity. But as Denise said, the contingency is if public health does not receive grant money, then these positions would not be authorized. Number 14 is for Parks and Trails. This is the maintenance position. And what we've stated in this is my proposal to you that it would be established if a revenue source is secured. And I did not specify that the revenue source would be the legislation that we had talked about where they can use impact fees. This would be any sustainable revenue source. So is that okay?
It is with me.
Yeah.
It's okay. I just want to make sure I understand what are we appropriating? If we're trying to get a revenue source, then what is it that we're doing now? For this 40, where is this 44,690 being appropriated from?
It's being appropriated in the Parks Fund, and right now they have a little bit of fund balance, but this would spend down the fund balance more than you would like to have it. So this is, it's appropriating the position, authorizing the position, much like other positions on this list, that if we've got funding for it, you can have the position. But if we don't, you can't fill it and spend this money.
Okay, so I think the missing link for me is by authorizing the position, we have to have the appropriate, we have to have a chunk of money that supports that.
Right.
But then we're limiting the expenditure of that. So it's kind of an illusion in a sense that we're not, it's there, but we're by the nature of the limitation, we're not really going to be spending that 44 out of that fund.
Yeah,
That's right.
and that is a good point because we don't have what we call unfunded positions.
That's what I was wondering. Could we have?
Yeah, no,
okay.
we don't have those.
Okay, got it. That explains my question.
We dipped our toe in that pond a couple of years ago and got burned.
Yeah, we got burned on that one.
Yes. Item number 15 is the provision that the assessor, this is the conversation you had with the assessor about the position that is budgeted in the real estate excise tax technology fund, the REIT tech fund, but that he is authorized to pay for the position out of the general fund to the extent that he sees fit. And that is the conversation you had with the assessor. And then line number 16 is a continuation of the attempt to normalize the money in the budget for elections. This authorizes the auditor to transfer money that was intended to pay for elections but is not spent to the election reserve account. And again, what we do, there's a 4-year cycle on elections, and some years, like a presidential election year, cost a whole lot more than other years. And rather than trying to adjust the appropriation in every year, we have this election reserve funds that we pay into in 3 years and we take out of in year 4 so that your budget doesn't bounce up and down. And that's actually worked pretty well this last 4 years. So that's the list of appropriations, or rather provisos. Is there any that we missed that you had expected to see on this list?
Not for me.
Can't remember any. Nope.
Gary, anything?
No, sir.
Okay.
All right. All right, then the final thing that we have to do this morning, going to save this, is to just give you a preview of the resolutions that you will see next Friday. So you'll take action on these one at a time, not as a bundle, but some things are bundled together. So you need to be aware of what's coming for your vote next Friday morning. The first thing is the capital facilities plan. And the reason that that's first is that the state law requires that the plan be adopted before the budget. So it is first on the list. And you actually have a separate time set on your calendar to adopt the CFP.
Are we going to see these other than up on the screen at some point?
You have this list in your packet.
Okay, good enough. That's what I was wondering. Yep.
Okay, and we'll make sure that you have the actual resolutions before Friday morning. So it may be Thursday, but it'll be before Friday. So the second item on the list under the public infrastructure plans is the transportation improvement program that you've reviewed with Public Works. Then we move to internal services and you adopt the 2021 cost allocation plan. that is brought forward by financial services. And this is for internal service costs. The next item is the ER&R, so the equipment rental rates. And these are the rates that we reviewed with you over the summer. Then we move into the section on taxes and fees. So you will approve an ordinance that amends the rates and charges in the Lake Lawrence Lake Management District. There is an ordinance for the rates and charges for the Long Lake Lake Management District. There's an ordinance that amends the Long Lake rates per parcel. There's an ordinance that approves the amendment of the water and sewer rates, charges, and fees for our water and sewer systems. And then you have a resolution on the parks impact fees.
And Robin, where will that resolution be? What's that going to be promoting?
The change in the parks impact fees,
Yes.
that is, go ahead, Romero.
That was part of a couple of briefings they provided to the board, as well as you heard a public hearing on that as well. So you like to see the documentation again on the briefings, or?
Yeah, I'm just, I need a refresher on that, I guess, because there's nothing here.
Yeah,
Is that the extension of the due date of the fee?
I can probably have Robin to look into the briefing documents and give you a copy.
I'm just trying to reflect back. I know we got comment from, I'm going to just say either realtors or master builders or something, and I wanted to see how that fit. That's all.
Yeah.
So Romero, do we need to follow up on that?
I will make sure that Commissioner Edwards has the briefing documents.
Okay.
But it may be helpful to, if the resolution is ready, maybe have a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get that.
That's kind of what I was hoping for. That.
Okay, you actually want to see the actual resolution?
Yeah.
Okay. So as soon as that is ready, we can probably make available to the board.
Thank
As
you.
soon as we get it.
This is the one, if it helps Commissioner Edwards, and I'm trying to remind myself, I think this is the one where there's 3 categories and 2 of them are ticking up and one of them's going down, and
Right.
the discussion about implementation date, et cetera.
The date, I recall the date specifically, yeah.
And also behind the whole conversation, remember, was the park impact fees are based on actual projects. And also projects need to be revisited to reestablish the new park impact fees. So it's a combination. It's not just adjusting the fees, it's also adjusting the projects that supports the fees.
Yeah, and it's, if I remember right, we had a discussion and possibly a disagreement on what positions we took on that. I just don't have it. It's not fresh in my mind right here. And without more information, I just wanted to, that's all. I want to see what we finally kind of came up with during that discussion.
So Romero, would this be something we would bring on Tuesday morning, perhaps?
Yeah, we can and have a further conversation. I'm sure we can probably have a copy of the actual resolution.
Yeah.
By Tuesday, yeah.
Denise has got her hand up.
I'm expecting to receive that resolution, that draft today, and I'd be happy to forward that on
Okay.
to you, Romero, if you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you, Denise.
That'd be perfect, because I don't want to wait till Tuesday. I'd like to see it as soon as we can.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Denise.
Right. Our offices and departments had until Friday, I think, to turn them in. So
Okay.
we're working on them. All right. Moving on to personnel actions. You'll adopt a resolution that sets the salaries for non-union county employees, and this incorporates the cost of living increase. Then the next resolution is position control. And this is the document that actually creates or changes the positions as you directed in the budget documents. Finally, you get to the actual appropriation. So the first is the operating budget. It establishes the budget by fund and department and FTEs by department. So there's that. And then you do the capital budget, and the capital budget is appropriated by project within each department. And right now you only have 2 departments that have capital projects. That's Public Works and Central Services. But the appropriation is by project. And once you appropriate the project cost, that money for the project is available to the department regardless of year. The next resolution is we have a modification proposed for the auditor's election reserve, and it just clarifies that the fund can be used for any purpose that is legally identified in the state bar's manual. And that is probably going to be an ordinance, by the way. Elizabeth will send us the language. And then the last item is you're abolishing Department 90. That department was just the payment to the state auditor for our annual audits. And you may recall that we're just putting that as part of non-departmental and eliminating the separate department that really didn't make a lot of sense.
Still excited. I've never abolished anything before.
Yeah, that guy feels good. Off of his head.
Department.
The whole department. That's right.
Streamlining government.
Got it.
So that's the list. And my question for you, not to open a can of worms, but we would need to know if there is any item in the budget that you would want to vote on separately. And we would need to know that right away so that we could pull it out into a separate action. And because if we wait until next Thursday or Friday morning, I would not have time to prepare the appropriate documents. And so let me pose the question a little more clearly. Are you okay with adopting the operating budget in its entirety in a single resolution?
I am.
I am.
Well, I was going to ask you a question about that, and that is there any chance that for next year's budget, we could make sure that we do something before the last minute? That's, I wish we could do this process earlier on. I know other jurisdictions do things that way. I am not claiming to be an expert in any way, shape, or form, but I just am always concerned about a lack of, I don't know if you want to call it review time, on a lot of the things that we do, we seem like we're right up to the wire, and then we do them. I mean, even, and I'll just use this as an example, the Parks Impact Fee resolution. I hate to have it presented as an issue without any verbiage in it, to be honest with you. I know that's coming, but I'm just using that as an example. And I don't know how my seatmates feel about how we ought to try and proceed in the future. I know we're up against a timeline now, so I'm not going to select anything out, I guess, at this point in time, but I'm sure looking for some adjustment. Maybe that's my own deficiency, but it seems like I never quite have enough time.
That's a process question for next year that can be worked on or looked at or discussed.
Yeah.
But it sounds like for Robin's question, the operating budget and the capital budget being adopted as a group,
Well,
individual group, rather than parceling out issues.
To that point, I wish I had that resolution in front of me about the Parks Impact Fee resolution.
We'll get a copy to you, but if I may address Commissioner Edwards' concern related to the park impact fees. There were 2 briefings to the board. There was a public hearing that were conducted. So, and this is just the result of that process. If you absolutely on point, then we need to give you a copy of the resolutions. We're going to do that. But I'm not necessarily agreed to the point that we're rushing you at the last minute with an item that you have reviewed over 2 briefings, and you have held a public hearing on this, as the process mandates. So, so I'm a little bit off on that comment, if I may.
Okay, well, that's just a point to be considered for in the future, I guess.
So do you want, I'm sorry, Gary, go ahead.
I just like to see that resolution because it seemed like I had a concern in there about.
We'll make sure we'll get a copy.
I do not remember where I was at on that. I don't have my notes in front of me, so that's where I'm at.
Okay. Robert, will you restate your question then? Just restate your question, just for clarity.
Before I do, it sounded like Commissioner Minster had a comment.
Oh,
Well, I just wanted to clarify whether or not is the park impact fee piece part of the package that you're asking us if we want to vote on it all at one gulp?
No,
Or is
the park impact fee is a separate action.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I think Commissioner Edwards doesn't have to worry. He'll have a chance. If it turns out he looks at his notes and he's not comfortable, he'll have that chance. You're talking about you're just talking about the appropriation decisions that we made basically over all this process, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure he is answering the right question.
Thank you. That's why I wanted Robin to restate it, so we just go right to that question. But good separating that out. Thank you for that, Ty. So go ahead, Robin.
Right. So in the past, there have been some actions, and not to.
Go ahead, do it.
I'm gonna. For example, the money that we have in the budget for the climate action. Perhaps one of you feels so strongly about that you'd want to take a separate action on that. We would pull that out and have that be separate. But each of these resolutions
On the climate action, Robin?
Well, I didn't want to pick on the sheriff or another office, so I just picked on one of our things.
As an example.
Yes, just as an example. But if there's something in this budget, and the reason I'm bringing this up now is so that we're not rushed at the last moment. In past years, on the morning of the budget adoption, I've been asked to pull stuff out, and it's just about impossible to do the proper legal documents at that point in time. So, and that's why I'm asking now.
And I appreciate your question in doing that because you're showing deference and respect to the commissioners. Should there be some issue or item that they would want to bloviate on or opine why they voted one way or the other. And I appreciate that. That's very, that's nice for you to do that, especially not having to wait till the morning of and say, oh, now I'm gonna change my mind. I'm gonna pull this out. So it's smart thinking strategically as well as showing respect. And I'm okay with the way they are now.
Robin, could you just clarify that for me? You're talking about the 16 items that we just went over, right?
The 16 items that we just went over are each a separate item. So
Yes, but I mean, you're talking about consolidating them into one vote.
no, I am not.
You're not?
No, I am talking specifically about this one item under the appropriation, this one right here. Yeah.
Give me a minute.
Yep.
She's talking about this one.
Yeah.
Whether you like to take any items out of this action to take a different individual vote. It's just this one.
Okay, no, I don't think so.
So these are the items that we talked about all through September, the October reviews.
I'm okay.
No?
Yep.
No.
If you're good with that as a whole package, then I think we're good to go.
No, I'm okay.
All right. Excellent.
Did I hear okay from Commissioner Messer on this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, none of us got everything we wanted, and I understand that sometimes there's something that's so kind of against your core values that you want to pull that out. So I get that, but nothing falls into that category for me. I'm comfortable with voting it as a one chunk, and the voters, we can certainly make it clear that we didn't all agree with every single element. It's a democratic process and a 3-commissioner system. So I'm comfortable with a single vote.
Thank you.
Great. All right, then we're going to get all of the legal documents wrapped up and reviewed, and we'll make those available to you as we have them. And definitely by next Thursday, they will be available. And with that, we're done.
Yeah, the only outstanding item, I'll follow up on the park impact fees. So Denise is going to send me a copy of the resolution. I will distribute that. I will also look for the briefing documents for you too. And I will distribute that to all 3 of you.
Thank you.
Right. And we can cancel tomorrow's deliberation meeting.
When was that scheduled for?
9 to 11:30.
Okay, great, thank you. Very good. All right, well, Denise, Patty, and Olivia gone. And Robin, thank you very much for your diligence, your work, and attention to detail. And this meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioners.
You.